Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the one hidden force that quietly decides who gets rich and, well, who stays broke in our modern economy. It's this massive mechanism operating constantly in the background of your life, and it affects literally every single dollar you earn, spend, and save. Seriously, by the time we wrap up today, you are going to look at your bank account in a completely different light. Let's get into it.
So to really see how this machine works, let's look at two totally different people, starting at the exact same finish line. Actually, scratch that, the same starting line, I should say. Meet Julia and Russell. Same age, same city, same paycheck, and they both start out with 50 grand in cash. Now Julia, she's the picture of responsibility, the one your parents would absolutely love, right? She parks her $50,000 in a safe savings account and owes absolutely no one. Russell, on the other hand, kind of treats his cash like it's on fire. He dumps his money into index funds and takes on $300,000 in fixed mortgage debt. If you met them at a dinner party, Julia looks like the responsible adult, while Russell seems like a guy one bad month away from total disaster. But as we're going to see, Julia is quietly going broke while standing perfectly still. And Russell? He's getting richer in his sleep.
Okay, let's dive into this. To understand why Julia and Russell's lives are about to split so drastically, we have to talk about inflation. And I mean really define it, because people throw this word around all the time without actually understanding what it's doing to them. Inflation is not just prices going up, that's just the symptom. The real structural change here is that your dollar is actively losing its ability to buy things. It's the exact same piece of paper, but it just buys less stuff.
Now, we all know the official inflation rate can be a total roller coaster, but let's be super conservative for a second. Think about a calm, boring, long-run inflation rate of just 2.5% a year. Sounds like a tiny rounding error, right? No way. It is a silent, unvoted for stealth tax. Just think about Julia. Her quote-unquote safe savings account pays her maybe a third of a percent. Meanwhile, her dollars are losing 2.5% of their value. So every single year, this responsible saver goes backward by over 2% without spending a single dime. She's literally being charged for the privilege of holding cash.
The core of this whole trap really comes down to two economic concepts: nominal value and real value. The nominal value is just the number on the screen. When Julia logs into her banking app, she sees that nominal number ticking up, and, it makes her feel secure. But the real value? That's what that number can actually buy out in the physical world. And Julia is trapped. She's running her entire financial life staring at a growing nominal balance, totally unaware that her real purchasing power is just quietly bleeding out.
Which brings us to a really fascinating question. If Julia is losing 2% of her purchasing power every year, where does that wealth actually go? Because here is the uncomfortable truth. Inflation never destroys money. It doesn't just vanish into thin air. It simply moves it to the other side of the table. So, who's sitting over there?
Well, the system is built to transfer that wealth, and it goes to three main places. First, it goes to debtors, people paying back loans with dollars that are now worth less. It's basically a slow, silent forgiveness program for people in debt. Second, it goes to asset holders, people who own stocks, real estate, or businesses. Their prices float up on the exact same tide that sinks the cash saver. And finally, it goes to the single biggest borrower on the entire planet, the government. A few years of solid inflation quietly shrinks the real size of their massive national debt.
And this brilliantly illustrates why Russell's seemingly reckless debt is actually a superpower. See, Russell locked in a 30-year fixed mortgage with a payment of $2,000 a month. Think about what inflation does to a fixed number. While groceries, rent, and wages all get more expensive over the years, that $2,000 payment is perfectly frozen in time. By year 20, making that payment will only feel like parting with $1,200 in today's terms. And by year 30, it feels like under $1,000. He's paying the bank back in shrunken dollars, all while the house he bought just keeps climbing in price.
Let's actually track this over time. Watch how this builds. By year 5, Julia gets a nice, respectable 3% raise at work. Awesome, right? But because prices went up even more, that raise is actually a pay cut in real terms. Fast forward to year 10, and the lines on the chart have genuinely separated. Julia's original $50,000, which she kept perfectly safe in cash, remember, now only has the purchasing power of about $41,000. Russell's assets, meanwhile, give him a real purchasing power close to $100,000. Same starting line, vastly different realities.
Just think about Julia's situation at year 5 for a second, because it really highlights the quiet heartbreak of this entire system. She celebrates having more dollars, but she has less buying power. A raise that is smaller than the rate of inflation isn't a raise at all. It's a polite, smiling demotion. And honestly, the hardest part is that she has absolutely no idea it's even happening. By year 10, the real-world consequences hit hard. Julia finally feels ready to buy the dream lake house she's been saving for since her 20s.
Back when she started, it was $200,000. Now, it's closer to $340,000. Suddenly, the bank wants a bigger down payment than she even has. The finish line was literally put on wheels and rolled away from her. Russell, on the other hand, got that exact same raise as Julia. But because his biggest expense, his mortgage, never moved a single dollar, that extra money lands directly in his pocket.
Now, you might be wondering why Julia doesn't see this coming. She isn't stupid. She is simply experiencing something economists call money illusion. It's just human wiring. We feel the dollar amount, not the dollar's true worth. It's the exact reason why a $5 coffee feels completely normal to you, but feels totally outrageous to your dad. It's the same coffee, but a different dollar. The dollar got smaller, but we rarely update that picture in our heads.
Let's step out of Julia and Russell's story for a second, because the real-world data makes this super concrete. If we compare 1970 to 2026, wow, a postage stamp went from 6 cents to 84 cents, a brand new car went from $4,000 to north of $52,000, and a house went from $24,000 to over $450,000. Keep in mind these are the exact same items. It just requires a much scarier amount of paper to own them today.
To put that into perspective, if your grandfather had taken a single dollar in 1970 and stuffed it under his mattress, today it would only buy you about 12 cents worth of stuff. That single dollar has lost 88% of its power, just sitting perfectly still. The mattress was literally the worst performing investment in the house. It didn't lose the number, it just completely lost its meaning.
We also experience a pettier, highly visible modern version of this every single day, shrinkflation. You know exactly what I'm talking about. It's that bag of chips that is now legally classified as mostly air, or the paper towel roll suddenly missing 20 sheets. Coffee packaging has even shrunk enough in some cases to equal a 30% price increase. Now, to be fair, across the whole economy, shrinkflation is actually a tiny fraction of total inflation, but it's the part we can actually hold in our hands and get mad at the grocery store, right?
All right, fast forwarding to the climax of our story at year 30. Julia, the one who did everything right, played it safe, never missed a payment to herself, sees her save $50,000 reduced to a real buying power of just $24,000. She lost half her wealth to an invisible thief. Russell, the guy who looked totally irresponsible at that dinner party, sees his wealth sitting near $380,000. His wealth multiplied 14 times. The only difference was what they believed a dollar was.
But hey, we can't end the story without a crucial bit of nuance here. Julia wasn't entirely wrong. The plot twist is that cash actually has a very real job. When Russell's investments dropped one year and he felt sick about it, Julia slept just fine. Because holding zero cash is its own kind of reckless. Why? Well, an emergency cash fund protects you from being forced to sell volatile assets, like your stocks, during a 20% market drop just to fix a busted transmission. The lesson here isn't to hold zero cash. The lesson is not to hold idle excess cash past your emergency cushion and call it safe.
So what actionable tools actually beat this inflation trap? First, you can own pieces of the economy through index funds, riding the exact same wave that lifts prices. Second, you can lock in debt through a fixed mortgage, letting inflation eat your debt instead of your savings. And for the more cautious folks, there are government, treasury, and savings bonds. Think about this. During the last inflation spike, some government savings bonds paid over 9%, while the big banks down the street were offering less than 1% and throwing in a free pen. The tools are absolutely there. You just have to use them.
Ultimately, Julia didn't lose because she was lazy, and Russell didn't win because he was some financial genius. He simply understood that the dollar is a melting ice cube. You can either hold it and watch it disappear, or trade it for something that grows faster than it melts. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one provocative thought to rethink how you view your own savings. The next time you check your balance and see that the number has gone up, ask yourself, is your money actually worth more, or is it just more dollars?